So welcome to those of you who are tuning in online here. Are they seeing and hearing us now?
Yeah.
Great. I'm not going to use a microphone, but I'm going to be loud. So I think I should hand it back to Tiffany.
Yeah, hi Kevin.
Hi.
Thank you so much for coming. So good afternoon, everyone.
Hello.
Hi, Taiwan. Good afternoon, and for those online, good afternoon. So welcome to this annual event hosted by NTUE International Affairs Office. I'm Professor Tiffany Lin from the Department of Children English Education, and I'm now the Director of our International Affairs Office. Today we're very honored to have our honorable keynote speaker, the award-winning producer, professor, entrepreneur, and all many other big titles. Kevin Geiger to come here to share with us his insights, his vision for the future for Taiwan, for the content creators in Taiwan. And I believe it's a very meaningful and insightful, inspiring talk for all of you. So thank you all for coming here today. I believe it will be a life-changing talk, okay? Yeah.
No pressure, right?
Yeah.
I didn't realize it was an annual event. Wow.
It's an annual event.
All
We're
right.
so
I better not
honored to
screw it
have
up.
you. And Kevin and I actually have planned on this for a long time.
Yeah.
And
Finally got it nailed down.
yes, first I would like to express gratitude to Kevin, to all of you, and to all my wonderful crew in our International Affairs Office.
Murphy over there.
Yeah, Murphy, thank you, and Jill, and everyone. Thank you all for making this happen. So now, let's welcome Kevin and give him a big hand.
Wow. So yeah, I really didn't know this was an annual event, and I'll make sure I do a good enough job that you guys will come back next year if you're here. The topic of this presentation, which isn't actually intended to be a presentation, it's really more, hopefully, of a discussion. We have a lot of knowledge in the room, a lot of wisdom in the room, and I want to take advantage of that. So, including with people who are online. So we will be saving, I'll try to save half of our time to really just talk about stuff. I'm going to be skimming over a lot of stuff really fast, hopefully not talking too fast. If I am speaking too fast, which I tend to, somebody just raise your hand and I'll slow down. But I'm going to be touching upon some thoughts that I have, but then really digging into that with you all during the discussion, and we'll have the opportunity for people who are online to send things in chat, and we have a staff member here who will collect comments and questions so that they can participate as well. And I also wanted to mention that even though this is about opportunity for content creators in Taiwan, it's really about opportunity for anybody, anywhere. I'm trying to focus this on some high-level precepts that I've learned throughout my career, and I'm frankly still learning, that I think are helpful for anybody who is dealing with the notion of like pivoting to opportunity, as I would say. So this is not really a lecture, but it's really kind of my life. And with that in mind, I want to start out with my backstory, not just to talk about myself endlessly on ego, but really by way of example to sort of illustrate through my own path how there has been this constant sort of cycle of challenges, opportunities, pivoting, and trying to take advantage to the extent possible of the things that are in front of me, whether those were challenges or something that I can turn into an opportunity. So in terms of who I am, I'm Kevin Geiger. That's been said many times now. I'm 56. I've been, yes, that's like half a century on the planet, making mistakes, learning from those mistakes. One thing that has been a constant throughout my life has been my love of creativity. So ever since I was a little kid, 4 years old, I love to draw, I love to write, and my parents were really good about supporting that love of creating. I think they were terrified when I decided to actually make it into a profession. I know many of you here maybe have family who are very supportive, but also perhaps a little concerned about, is that really the best career choice, or are you going to be able to make money out of that? I will tell you that whatever you put your mind to and your passion to will work out. You will find a way to make it work. You won't starve to death. You may do quite well for yourself in ways you never imagined, as long as you follow your heart. And I was lucky that my parents supported me in doing that. I went to art school. I was a painting major and a sculpture minor, and I was mostly kind of focused on abstraction, etc. When I got out of school, I won, Tiffany mentioned award-winning, I won kind of every award you could win in school. And then when I got out, I was unemployable. Nobody wanted to hire me. I would go in and talk to a university, about a teaching job, and they would say, oh, you've got a BFA. How you see that stack over there? Those are the MFAs who are applying for this job. Okay, so reality came crashing down pretty fast. But I didn't give up. I spent a lot of time, cleaning people's basements and painting houses to support myself, but still pursuing my dream as an artist. And I had an epiphany one day, which I was watching Luxo Jr., like Pixar, short film, before they became famous with Toy Story. And this was something that to me was like rocket science or brain surgery. I couldn't imagine that a person did this. Right? Even I knew they used computers, but how was this possible? Certainly not for somebody like me. But then I saw a making of, and it actually made sense that human beings actually were applying tools, the computer, to create something that was driven by storytelling, driven by character. And so I thought to myself, okay, well, law students go to law school to become lawyers. Medical students go to medical school to become doctors. Right? But art students, you go to art school and then you kind of support your art like a drug habit in a way, like finding other things to support the art as opposed to using the art itself. So I thought there must be some way to apply myself. And I realized that I could apply my art and design background to computer graphics. So long story short, I went to Ohio State University to get my MFA in computer animation. And then suddenly I was employed. This is around 1994. I went to work at first for Boss Film Studios, which is a small visual effects house in Los Angeles, now since gone. But Richard Holland was the founder of this, was the visual effects supervisor for Star Wars, the original Star Wars movie in 1977. And I worked on a film called Species, which was kind of like it was almost like a sci-fi porn movie in a way. I guess probably the simplest way to summarize it. A B-level film, and I remember like being there thinking, oh my God, my parents will be so proud of me seeing me. I mean that sarcastically. But that really was my entree into Hollywood, into visual effects and animation. And it wasn't exactly a glamorous job, right? There's a lot of pressure, a lot of demand to get things done on time, on budget. I was paid very well, I thought, by my previous standards, but then quickly realized I was the lowest paid person at the company, which I should have been consistent. But the cool thing about this is that it led me eventually to a job that really changed my life at the Walt Disney Company. So I went to work at the Walt Disney Company as a computer modeler at first, doing models, texturing, lighting, rigging, etc., setting up the characters, eventually becoming a supervisor, and working with a really great group of people. One thing about this photo that I realize now, so these are my friends who were supervisors on Chicken Little. We also have the Randy Fulmer up top, the producer, and we have Mark Dindal, the director, myself over here, a much younger version of myself. What's wrong with this picture? Anybody tell me? It's a bunch of white dudes, right? So this is, it is, and it's like, I mean, we were talking about diversity in my classes last semester at NTUE, and I was just, crap. It's like, there I was kind of falling right into this trend, which has thankfully changed. If you look now at a lineup of crews, supervisors, etc., at the Walt Disney Company, you'll see, thankfully, a much more diverse group of people in terms of race, gender, orientation, all of that. And you also see that reflected now in the movies. But this was kind of, and I'm not trying to criticize. My friends who are watching and will see this later on. I love you guys, right? But yeah, we were, look at that's kind of how it was, and it wasn't even anything that we were conscious of. We were unconsciously benefiting from it. So this is something I think about a lot. As a white male, there's a lot of, even though I wasn't born into a rich family, my family was actually quite poor, but still, by global standards, super privileged, right? By world standards, we had nothing to complain about. So it's something that I think all of us should be mindful of in terms of how lucky we are, how privileged we are in taking advantage of, that, and also helping other people at the same time to get a leg up. So while I was at Disney, I worked on a number of different films: Fantasia 2000, Dinosaur, showing how old I am, Reign of Fire, and Chicken Little, which I mentioned, was really the film I had the most fun on. I was responsible for a lot on that as a supervisor, but we were really trying to take the tradition that Disney had of 2D animation into 3D with squash and stretch, and really playing with the characters in a way that hadn't been done in CGI so much before. So I also worked on, a film you might know called, what's it called here in Chinese? Tangled is the English title. It went through a number, it's the Rapunzel story. And Disney now is in this phase where everything is an adjective, right? Tangled, frozen. They figure those are, and all the millennials, that's all they have attention for. Just like one word, make it clear. So this film, I worked in R&D on the hair. We had to figure out how to deal with this volume of hair, but also how to really interpret Glenn Keane, the famous Disney animator of Little Mermaid and the Beast from Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, how to interpret his style in 2D, the big eyes, all of that, into 3D without it looking too creepy. And I think that, by this point they really got to the threshold of success, but it was a struggle, right? How to adapt that. And now I think when you look at Disney films, animated films, you really see a nice hybrid of the best of the 2D traditions of animation and also the best of what 3D can do. And Zootopia, for example, is one of my favorites, not only because it deals with racial issues and tolerance in a metaphorical way, but also it really, if you look back at like The Fox and the Hound and some movies like that, you'll see how things they were doing in 2D with animals and so forth are really being expressed quite well by the animators now. And also, like, not just a bunch of white guys. So that's good to see. There were so many. I have two daughters, and it would really kind of disappoint and surprise me and make me think about what can I do to change this when I would go and speak at a school, and a lot of high school students, grade school students, the girls in the class, the women in the class, wouldn't think that that was something necessarily that was for them. Like, that's whether it's programming or animating, it was something that they didn't think was kind of open to them. They just assumed that's a boys' club, and certainly it was, right, in many places. You've seen the news about companies who have gotten in trouble, animation, gaming, etc., for having that kind of boys' club environment that really is ultimately not conducive to the best work or opportunity. So, during my time at Disney, I worked in development department, doing CGI visualizations of things that had not yet become movies. This was very cool and also very devastating at the same time, because you got to work on stuff before it was a thing, right? The earliest concepts, the earliest embryo of an idea of something. But most of what you did never made it to the screen. So if you're working in production, there's a pretty good chance, you could have a shot cut, you could have a movie canceled, but 80-90% chance that what you do, something's going to get up on the screen. Development, 95% chance that it's not going to make it, and it goes into the vault. But this really kindled, I bring this up because it kindled a desire in me for development, for moving beyond just a production focus to the creative. And again, going back to, I guess, my art roots in school. So I was working on animated short films on the side and trying to do something very different from the Disney style. So this is a shot from Henry's Garden, a short film I worked on with my partner at the time, and kind of going from more of a gothic approach and kind of like those old school 1920s Frankenstein, the Mummy, and so forth. And also teaching. So I love to teach. I've taught throughout my career in the US, in China, here. And Cal Arts was actually a school that I got accepted to as a student but couldn't afford to go to. But then I taught there, so I showed them. And it's a really, as you know, an incredibly famous environment. Most of the greats, many of the greats, I should say, in animation came from this environment. And Walt Disney actually set it up, right, as a training ground originally for the Walt Disney Company. Now it's really kind of a training bed for all of Hollywood. And most of the teachers here, like myself, were evening teachers who would work in Hollywood in daytime, Nickelodeon, Cartoon Network, Disney, Sony, what have you, and then teach, at night. Everything. But I got bored at Disney. This might sound weird. I was making good money. I was doing exciting stuff. I was working on arguably the top of my field, but that gets kind of dull. It became sort of like clocking in and out every day at a bank, and I really wanted something more. I wanted to do my own thing, make my own films, produce my own stuff. So I took a step by quitting and going out as a consultant. And this was really important because people would think, oh, well, you're working at Disney, you must know everything about the business and what's going on. Actually, you don't. You know a lot about very little, but you kind of lose the latitude of your perspective in terms of what's going on in the world. So when I started consulting, I popped around everywhere. I was in Europe, I was in South America, the Middle East, China, different parts of Asia, and really seeing what was going on in terms of people doing some really great work at big studios, small studios, actually more great work at the small studios than some of the big ones, ironically. But also understanding how, again, kind of self-entitled and spoiled I was as an American animator compared to what was going on in the rest of the world. And especially, you would hear so many animators complaining about outsourcing. Like, how come we're sending work to, to Taiwan or to Vietnam or to Korea or wherever? But then you talk to a Korean animator or a Taiwanese animator who was working in the best job they ever had. They're working on a shop. There was actually, I remember a woman I talked to, this was in China, where she had some work on her desk that probably would have made my friends in Los Angeles mad. Like, why is this person working on this? And I asked her, I said, what would you say to people who would be angry to see you working on this? This is an outsource, right? You're taking jobs away from Americans. And then she said, kind of very softly, without looking up, she said, why do Americans think they're the only ones in the world who deserve opportunities? And I was blown away. That was like the most awesome answer. Like, I just cut right to the heart. And then I talked to her more and found out that she always admired animation, anime, as well as the Disney tradition. Wanted to study it, did study it, but thought she would end up just like working in her parents' fruit stall for the rest of her life. Got a job at this animation studio, making nothing by American standards, but making so much money she was sending it back to her family. I mean, it was just like a really powerful story. And I remember thinking a lot then about just the world at that point and perspective, point of view. So it's almost like this is a confessional session for me, but really a lot of waking up, right, about the world and people and just what constitutes opportunity and also entitlement and how you can balance that out. So I eventually ended up, as part of my stepping out into the world, I moved to China in 2008 to take a teaching job at the Beijing Film Academy and also to become what they called like a foreign expert. So this is still where the big white Hollywood face was counting for something. Oftentimes I was asked to come and talk about a project or speak at a conference, and nobody would really listen to what I had to say or do what I was suggesting to do. But they could say, hey, we had our Hollywood consultant, give their seal of approval on this, and it was all good. It was a very weird existence because I, again, was not making anything really by American standards, but I surprisingly could live on it in China. I was living in a student dorm, actually, as like a 40-something-year-old guy, and being flown to these conferences, 5-star hotel, first class, and then back to my student dorm. So it was this really kind of whipsaw existence, but again, learning a lot and also seeing what opportunities I could make for myself. So I co-founded a company called Molijiaozi, the Chinese name, Magic Dumpling Entertainment in Beijing, focusing on development of IPs, using Chinese themed content, but with global audiences in mind in terms of quality, etc. And this was back when co-productions with China still were a thing and still were possible. I'll talk later a little bit about how the media environment kind of went in a different direction fairly recently. But around 2008-9, things were actually looking like they were opening up and that we can take advantage of. And the interesting thing is that because we were small, nobody really paid any attention to us in China. Where's your big building? Where's your plaque? Where's your gigantic this or that? And it was just a few of us kind of working out of our garage, metaphorically. But around the world, we were getting written up in magazines talking about how we were taking things like, this is Tofu Boy, so it's a play on Pinocchio. So the little wooden boy is a little tofu boy. And his superpower is that he can be any kind of tofu. So dojang, right? Tofu, and he can use that to his advantage in certain situations to slide under a door. When he gets angry and starts to be kind of a jerk, he turns into a chodofu, right? So this was something where, again, the playfulness, playing with the culture, you'll hear me talk about this later, is really important. Not being so serious about things. And my role with my Chinese colleagues was kind of coming in with the dumb questions. Well, why is this way? Or how about that? And then oftentimes they would explain things to me about the culture in a depth that I didn't understand. But also my kind of idiotic outside point of view would give them ideas about how we could play with something in a fun way, make it something entertaining for ourselves and for others. So that actually led us to, just like in The Godfather, just when I was out, they pulled me back in. Disney was setting up a team in China to do Chinese themed content, full quality, and they became aware of me there and how I was kind of hacking through the weeds entrepreneurially. Long story short, they liked the fact that I was from them. I had the Disney pedigree, right, so they could trust me. But also I was already there trying to do it. So these are my colleagues and my wife Gwen. Wasn't my wife at the time, but now. And our good friend Ye. And we went from basically helming Magic Dumpling to setting up this team. It was in Beijing, but it was incorporating people from everywhere. People from Taiwan, Hong Kong, people from the USA. We're working together, developing original content. Some of it was adaptations of content from the USA. Others were things that we were developing ourselves. They bought the Tofu Boy, you see there. And then Banji Balian is a Stone Lion buddy comedy that we were developing also at Magic Dumpling. And we put 4 shows on the air. We developed 10 projects, 12 projects, put 4 of them on the air. And as I mentioned, Banji Balian was one of the most successful. That went on to Max CCTV. And then I left again. Not because I was bored, but because for strategic reasons that we don't have time to go into now, but maybe during the Q&A, Disney was kind of pivoting away from having local teams. We weren't the only local team. Disney was trying to diversify by having local content teams in China, India, South America. Like, let's have people who actually live and work there creating this stuff. And then when the streaming was becoming a thing, thought, oh, maybe we don't need that. We can just stream everything from our central headquarters in Los Angeles and have that kind of command control there. That didn't work out in China for reasons we will get to also. But it did mean that they were like, when my contract was up, they said, thank you so much. And then, I moved on. The great thing about that is that this was right when VR was really kind of taking off in the public consciousness. VR has been around for a long time. We're actually kind of in the 3rd iteration of it now. In the 1960s, you had kind of initial explorations with research and so on. And then in the 1990s, you had the Nintendo Virtual Boy and the Power Glove and so forth. But it never really gained consumer traction. Everybody thought maybe this third round would be the time it does, but we're also struggling now with just getting people to actually want to put a face hugger on their head and enjoy content, right? You'll pick up a phone and look at that, but my mom, I had her try VR once, and here, Mom, she put it on, and then she was like, that's nice. I thought, okay, she's never going to look at that again. But she's 82, I think. She uses an iPad, she teaches online, she's not technophobic. She just really needs a reason to use VR. And this is something important, that people don't want to use something just because you want them to use it, or because you think it's cool. They want to watch something or use something or do something because there's something they want to experience, like on a TV show, or something they want to do. Almost nobody wants to use the computer. Who the hell cares, right? You want to edit something, you want to write something, you want to create something, and this is a tool to do that with. I guess there are some people who like using the computer, but most normal people don't care about the tool as much as what the tool can do for them. So I segued into virtual reality, immersive media, still in China during this time, working on conferences, coordinating between the US and China, have guests, etc. And just to bring this around, a point of interest, 2018, I was giving a talk on AI. Somebody said, can you give a talk on AI? I was like, sure, you can name any topic. Why not? I'm game. And I was talking about the jobs and the careers that are most likely to be disrupted by artificial intelligence. And I was mentioning things like, drivers will be disrupted by automated cars, and if you're a bank teller, like, forget it, you're gone, etc. But I said, well, the people who have the least to worry about are creators, writers, artists, designers. 30 years out, something like that. Then you have to worry, but nothing on the horizon. And now 5 years later, we got ChatGPT, Midjourney, DALL-E, etc., shaking everything up. And again, we'll get into that as well. So I guess this means don't really listen to me because I don't know what I'm talking about. I have no crystal ball into the future at all, apparently. But it's just kind of funny to me that the pace of change can be incredibly instantaneous. Talking about pivoting to opportunity. Sometimes changes are on the horizon, you see them coming. I was in that cycle with the shift to digital. to computers. Many people lost their jobs or couldn't handle the shift. I was one of the lucky ones who was, even though I had a traditional background, I was on the correct side of that. That's it. Other people weren't. And I thought that would be the last one. Like, how many revolutions can you have in your lifetime, right? And then if anybody told me, oh, by the way, in 2003, 2002, 2003, AI is going to flip everything on its head. You're going to be writing using AI and creating images using AI. I'd be like, what? What the hell are you talking about? But indeed, it is happening. And I think it's important that it is happening because we're now moving into ways of expression that go beyond traditional media, go beyond traditional television, film, into Web 3.0, the metaverse, although I hate using that word, that's going to sound very old. If people watch this 10 years from now. Metaverse, remember when people were calling it the internets and so forth. But if you want to have immersive environments that are responsive, you walk into a room, a virtual room, and there are characters there are situations, and they respond to you, there's no possible way that human beings can pre-program, pre-consider, pre-build all of that. You need, really think about this, you need a technology that can instantaneously respond to you in terms of the situation, instantaneously create whatever is supposed to be in that room, change it. And that's really, I think, where AI is going to be essential for, like Ready Player One or Matrix. Maybe the Matrix is a bad example, but any immersive environment that you want to use to entertain, to educate, to do business is going to have this as a necessity. So if you want, you can scan that QR code, which leads to my blog. I not only talk incessantly about this stuff, but I also write about it quite a bit. And every few weeks or so, I'll squeak out an article related to some issue on the front of animation, visual effects, and lately a lot about technology, metaverse, AI, and so on. Having said all of that, I really think that the most important thing still is personal creativity. So I quite enjoy nothing more than sitting down with my iPad, and I do a drawing every day, whether it's something more, I guess, artistic like this, or something cutesy like this little Frankenstein guy. I try to do one drawing every morning or every evening just to keep my hand in it and to keep things fresh and not worry about technology too much, even though I am using a stylus and an iPad. Not worry about coordinating teams of people or a budget, but just expressing myself, enjoying myself with creativity. That led me to work on a series of ebooks for children. And I'm currently now, this summer, probably fall actually, I'm going to publish my latest book, Grandpa Groundhog. That will actually be my first physical publication. And it really is something that I think is important, especially now as a father. These are my daughters, there's Emma and Claire. It's actually a few years back. I really understand the importance of creating content for children and families, not as a theoretical abstract concept, but as something that is really, which leads us to the issue of disruption. So, why am I here? My wife is from Taichung. She's Taiwanese, and she's been living and working in China for quite some time. But we would come back to Taiwan 3 or 4 times a year to visit in-laws. We do all our medical and dental work here, and just generally enjoy the lifestyle. I mean, Taiwan is great. So we popped over here. It was January 8th, 2020. And we were flying out of Beijing. We're just about to get on the plane. Everything's fine. We did hear something was going on in Wuhan. It was like, something's always going on. We just got on the plane. If you told me we were flying out, you're never going back, I'd be like, what do you mean never going back? Never? Like, what happened? What? Are we okay? Yeah, you're fine, but you're never going back. Is the world up again? Kinda. But, kinda. So, this, right? The pandemic. We got here, and I remember like things were getting bad, and they're like, maybe we should delay our return like a week, right? And then they locked down Wuhan. It's like, maybe we should wait a month, right? And then pretty soon, so we were living like refugees, just in my father-in-law's apartment. We had nothing. We came here, we packed light, like 2 suitcases, all of our tech was back, and then pretty soon it was like, well Jesus, maybe we shouldn't go back at all. Like it wasn't, and then we couldn't, right? People were like, you gotta get back, they're gonna close the borders, It's like, I don't know if I want to go back, because it was just, And then of course all the borders did close, including here, and you kind of were where you were. So, but that was then, why am I still here? The reason I'm still here is not because of some accident, like, I got stuck in Taiwan, so I guess I'm still here. But really the opportunity. And this is leading into the core of what I want to talk about with you guys. I had good relationships with schools here because I would speak as a conference attendee and speaker quite frequently. And Taipei National University of the Arts, I have a number of friends there, and they always said, hey, if you're ever in Taiwan living here and you want to teach sometime, let us know. So I was like, hey, I'm here, and it seems like I'm going to be here for a while, so if you need a teacher, let me know. And to their credit, they hired me as a professor, so I taught there for 2 years. A number of different courses, traditional, digital, futuristic. There's the famous NTUE, HAL, one of the three. And this bottom topic, real-time story development for animation, is one that eventually led my wife and I to form our company. So we have a company here now called Tellretell. We actually just bought a new office down the street from here, from NTUE. So like we're right there. We're still in the process of getting it set up. The flowers you see outside are from Samantha Lynn. I know you're watching Samantha and her daughter. I mean, thank you. Samantha was our realtor who helped us find that spot, which is perfect. So we're trying to apply AI tools, digital backlots, motion capture, digital puppetry, virtual production to not only the production process, but also the development process. Developing for immersive media, even for traditional media, film and television, using these tools. And in the process, when we would visit here, we would just see like friends and relatives. Now that we're living here, we really dove deep into the ecosystem, the creative professional ecosystem of Taiwan. And it's fantastic. And especially because a lot of people were coming back here. You know, there was a period of time where people were like, I'm out of here, right? They would go to the US or go to China or go to Hong Kong or wherever just to make their fortune. And that's good, that's cool. But then when the pandemic hit, everybody's like, oh shit, sorry, I tend to be a little bit, but let's get back in where it's safe. And one silver lining of this was that you've got this critical mass of creatives and technologists and people. So this is an opening of a great virtual production stage here in Taipei. NTUE, some folks from Taika, really just this great blossoming, I feel, of creativity and idea sharing that I think is going to be to Taiwan's benefit, and then by extension, we hope to the world's benefit. So, opportunity. The pivot to Southeast Asia. For the South China Sea is kind of hot for a variety of reasons, as you guys know. But one thing that has been quite interesting is how it's become really this hotbed of creative attention from around the world, from producers, from studios. And there are a few reasons for this. One, of course, is just to acknowledge the elephant in the room. Many streamers, etc., have been blocked from having their content shown in countries, namely China, which is one big reason why I mentioned Disney's plans to focus on streaming. It's working out okay, but China is not necessarily open to that. More to a bunch of other streamers. So many of these companies have been focusing on Southeast Asia, HBO Max, Disney, Apple, etc. But then the Chinese companies, they're not going to stand there like, oh, well, you guys can just have Southeast Asia. They also want a piece of the action as well. So you've got Tencent, iQIYI, etc., who are angling for space, for a share of the pie in Southeast Asia. So this is not a bad thing. This is a great thing. You are in Southeast Asia. One, as a content market now, especially with 5G and the widespread use of mobile, etc., you have a lot of people who have the access and also the income to subscribe and to enjoy the content coming from these streamers. But more importantly, I feel as a creator, as a content source, Southeast Asia is becoming very important. And this is just one example. Monk Studios in Thailand, who started out basically insourcing work, so getting work for visual effects and animation on Western projects, but then inevitably starting to create their own original IP that then they were selling back to those, in some cases, the very same streamers. And many of those streamers, you form a relationship doing work for hire, they'll say, yeah, if you have anything that you're working on, you want to show us, they'll take a look. And if they like it, you're off to the races. So this is something that I feel is an opportunity for Taiwan. And I'm not saying, somebody asked me, is Taiwan part of Southeast Asia? I was like, oh, don't ask me what Taiwan's a part of with anything, right? But I'm not qualified to say that. I don't want to go there. But definitely in this region, and being at least Southeast Asian adjacent, if you want to say, I think there's a lot of opportunity for Taiwan to reclaim something which it used to have. Taiwan formerly had an entertainment production reputation. Working with Disney, working with Nickelodeon, working with Cartoon Network. So why am I showing you people manufacturing hardware? Because I think it's analogous to that. Taiwan also, around the same time, I'm talking about the 90s, was the place you went for laptops, shipbuilding, building, right? Anything. There was this engineering renaissance happening here that also was echoed by efforts that were being done in content creation and entertainment. And of course, we also know that the Silicon Shield is very important, right, for Taiwan, and what TSMC is doing in terms of making itself indispensable to the world. Like 80% of everything that uses a chip in the world needs chips from here. And that also it's a good thing for Taiwan because you want to be indispensable. Your best protection for anything, your job, if you're employed somewhere, your life is to be needed, to be indispensable. And this hardware stuff that I'm referring to is more about the head, but then there's the heart. And content, soft power can work the same way. If you create shows, if you create entertainment that people love, they're aware of you, they hope to see more of you and more from you, and that again is a good thing too. So I think it's really an opportunity for Taiwan to combine that renaissance of the head, that renaissance of the heart, into like a new golden era, potentially. And speaking of what was happening back in the 90s, Brave Little Toaster is an example of a project that was done here by Wong Film Productions, Cuckoo's Nest. This is James. I got to know James some time back, and really was a good example of somebody who did what many of you are doing now. From Taiwan, went to the USA, really struggled to learn as much as he could about animation, about the process there, worked in kitchens, got kicked around, but came back with that knowledge to create a studio that could match the production expectations of the major studios in the United States and give the quality at a price point that was good for the animators here. They were getting paid pretty well by Taiwan standards, but still super competitive with what the producers were looking at from the US and Europe. And that project also included the efforts of Glenn Keane. So Glenn Keane worked on Brave Little Toaster, and I've mentioned him before, but I got to become good friends with him on Tangled and still keep in touch with him today. He's also a great example of somebody, when we talk about pivoting to opportunity. When he left Disney, because he was also kind of tired of it, people were depressed. They were like, oh my God, this is terrible. Like, they were almost grieving like it was a death. And I had talked to Glenn. I knew he was onto something big, but I didn't know exactly what. And what it turned out, number one, is that he went to Google and he worked on some VR projects using hand-drawn animation, but in VR. I don't know if you've seen Duet and other projects he's worked on. But then winning an Academy Award in conjunction with Kobe Bryant for the animated short film Dear Basketball, right, which just had all the raw, graphic, crackling Glenn Keane energy of the drawings that typically was cleaned up later, which he hated, right? He loved his cleanup people, but he understood it's part of the process, but it lost some of that power. But that short really has it. And so it's great to see, somebody as famous as Ricardo. He's a Disney legend, literally. He's got the plaque on the plaza there, still learning, still growing, still changing. It's lifelong, it never stops. I don't mean that in an exhausting way, like, oh God, it never stops, really. But it doesn't have to stop. You can keep re-energizing yourself, refreshing yourself, and recreating yourself. So, Moomoo Hug is an example in terms of producing content for global audiences of something that unfortunately met an early demise. Terry Guo's son, Jeffrey, was one of the investors of this company, SOFA, and eventually I think got pressured to kind of pull his money out of the equation. And if you know anything about running a company, cash flow is very important. So if you're working on something and getting money coming in, that's great. But it has to come in on time so you can keep going. This is what sunk Ridley Hughes here, right in Taiwan, just after they got the Oscar for Life of Pi. They're on stage receiving the award at the same time the company's like done. So, sorry, that's a bit of a negative note, but it's real. Like you need to think about the business side as well as the creative. Moomoo Hug, though, I really enjoyed the fact that people around the world could watch this. It was my friend Vance Yang, who is still here working on projects, directing, and I was actually there as a consultant. You see me back in the day. But it's an example of something that, again, spoke to the heart in a way that didn't worry about does it have Taiwanese elements or not, but just was trying to speak to a common humanity and a common desire for entertainment. Nothing wrong with Taiwanese elements, by the way, but sometimes there's a little bit too much of a surface focus on that. And the secret is this: anything you do is going to be, if you are Taiwanese, I realize there are people in the room who are, anything you do is going to be of your culture represented. You have people who are many different cultures. You would not mistake me as anything but American. I don't just mean looking at me, but hearing me, etc. I'm never going to lose that. I've talked to people who are worried, like, if I go to America, will I stop being Taiwanese? Like, no, you'll feel more Taiwanese than ever, right? Because you'll be more conscious and aware of that, point of view than you were when you're surrounded by other people like yourself. So I think that's something that you shouldn't worry about, and you should really just think about expressing in a contemporary way, as opposed to the way other people might think you should. This is a great example. This is in terms of engaging hearts and minds around the world. Your name engraved herein. This was the first, I think, LGBTQ plus movie to gross more than 100 million NT in Taiwan. It's done super well overseas. It's something that people get. I don't understand it because I'm not Taiwanese. Everybody gets this movie. Some people don't like the movie, but everybody understands it, and it gets a reaction, right? There are people who are really inspired by this, moved by this. There are also people who have been converted by this. Maybe people who are like, I don't like that, and they find themselves being moved or touched in a way because of the humanity that's being expressed here. So this is just one example, but it's a good one of the possibility for something to break out and to connect. Doesn't mean that it got filmmakers rich by any means, but it definitely got the notice of the world and set a standard for what could be accomplished. Okay, so let me move on to some suggestions on how to do this. And these are just things that I've learned myself throughout my life, throughout my career. The one thing, and I want to make sure we get to the discussion period with enough time, because your suggestions and your experiences are equally valid, actually more so than mine. I'm on the way out, and you guys are coming up. So really, what's going to happen next in terms of this content that's going to be created, the history that's going to be written, it's going to be you folks here in this room, people online who are listening who have an idea, have something they want to express or share. It's going to be you. And don't let anybody tell you that it can't be done. And don't get depressed about current circumstances or current events or news to the point where you think, what's the use? There's always, in fact, the hope of the world is that people will say, you know what, yeah, things are bad, but that's all the more reason why I need to do it, why this has to happen. Okay, so embrace the world. I guess that's the main sort of top line thing to do. What exactly does embrace the world mean? It means that get out there into the world, let people know who you are, what you think, what you're trying to express, and have no fear, or at least tamp that fear down. Right? Courage is not about not being afraid. Courage is about being afraid or nervous and then doing it anyway. Right? Jackie Chan said that. So, and it was good that he's like, they say, I'm scared. Hell yeah, I'm scared. Jumping off a building or whatever. But I'm the one who does it, right? And that's the difference. It's amazing you can still walk actually, but quite impressive. Taika, and I have the QR code here for Taika. How many people know Taika? It's the Taiwan Creative Content Agency. Well, that's why I have the QR code here. Whether you know them or not, they're a very important piece of Taiwan's attempt to embrace the world. So Taika focuses not only on animation, but on all content creation, live action film, music, interactive media, VR, etc. And the cool thing is that they provide, there's my wife and I pitching one of our projects, they provide forums for people to pitch projects in front of investors. This was actually during the pandemic, so there were people in the room, mostly all Taiwanese with masks, and then we had people who were dialing in online, much like we have people here, to see what the pitches were and to potentially contact later for investment purposes and so on. And these often dovetail into forums and festivals such as, in this case, this is what Annecy Festival. So this is actually one of our projects that we had that was part of the Taiwan animated by Taika. So we competed in a competition. 12, I think, projects were chosen to be represented here. And you see KZ, which is coming out soon from Studio 2 here in Taiwan. I think it's coming out maybe next Lunar New Year. Poison Apple from Dot to Dot. A lot of really cool projects that, again, are reflective of the environment here, reflective of the culture here, but also speaking to an international audience in terms of storytelling, hopefully, quality, production values, and so on. But here's the hard reality. That's you. That's the world. You really need to understand here, this is not to depress you, but just like I remind myself every day, there's so much competition out there. There's so many people doing things, and the tools, whether it's virtual production, AI, to help individuals do more, better, faster, just increases the glut of stuff out there. So there's you, one of these like little little pixels. And even worse, who cares? Why should anybody care what you're doing, care about you? Hopefully, you care about yourself. That's the most important thing. If there's anybody who cares about you, it should be you, number one. If you don't care about yourself, nobody else is going to care about yourself. And what I mean is taking care of yourself. I'm too fat now, but eating well, taking your classes seriously if you want to. You don't have to, but if there's something you care about, like I want to be an animator, take your animation classes seriously. I know people who will skip other classes to focus on certain ones. That's cool too. They're making a choice. They may get punished for it in the other class, but they know what they want. Right? Know what you want. Take care of yourself. Your family hopefully cares about you. Sometimes that care is expressed as a weight against the direction you're trying to go. I mentioned earlier, I think before we started here, that families oftentimes, especially here in Asia and Taiwan, in a very well-meaning way, they don't want you to starve, they don't want you to be disappointed, right? And so they might caution against something that you're trying to do when you're pursuing your dream. That's a form of care. So you kind of got to struggle really hard to understand where it's coming from, even though it might be driving you crazy in terms of how it's affecting your day-to-day. But most people don't care what you're doing, what you're making. Why should they? So again, that doesn't mean I'm giving up, but how can I make them care? What do I have to do to make people care? How can I break through the indifference of the audience? How can I stand out, right, in the sea of stuff to have people pay attention to me? And there's no magic formula for this. Even though I've had successes with breaking through that, then the next project I'm right back down here with everybody else. It doesn't mean, hey, I've achieved this, so now I'm up here. There are some people like that. Steven Spielberg comes to mind, but I'm not Steven Spielberg. So, every project is kind of like back to the blank page, back to zero. That's also quite exciting. You always need to keep in mind your potential. So this is Claire, my oldest daughter. She's, I think, 8 there now. I show this photo not just because she's cute, but because Claire, when she first went to this flying yoga class, was terrified. She was excited about doing it, but then when she actually had to start doing it, like even just like putting her foot, the first thing they have you do is you put your foot into the sling. Just put your foot in there. She was crying, like just panic, and now she's doing this. And she's got a show coming up where she's doing things like, oh my God, like, is it done? Okay, it's just like flipping around, like her head here off the floor. But the potential to do that was there, right? And she didn't even know it was there until she actually just went, tamp down your fear and just give it a try. And teachers are taking care of making sure that there's cushions underneath and nobody does anything dangerous. But now she's built a lot of confidence. I can see that just in other areas, like not just physically, but how she approaches the world, because you have this ability. And here in Taiwan as well, the potential now. I talk to producer friends of mine, executives who, when I discuss developing work in Taiwan and even coming to Taiwan to do production, they're like, Taiwan, isn't that that's like the 90s, right? Like that's over. It's like, well, yeah, I mean, there was a diaspora, right, where people like went elsewhere to make their fortune. So Taiwan kind of got gutted in a way in terms of that talent base, etc. But it's coming back now. I use images like this as an example of the latest technology, the latest approaches, right? People who are trying to think of new ways to create content and put it out there. Happening here, and the advantage of Taiwan being small, relatively small compared to other places in the world, is that it really can supercharge that energy. You can bounce all over the territory here in no time flat, from Taipei to Kaohsiung, where I'm king, and see anybody you want. It's almost like Taiwan almost reminds you of Los Angeles, like just that core, that of energy, that core of creativity and of opportunity. And I think that everybody is starting to realize this is possible. Like maybe people at first like, can we really do that? So yeah, we can. So it's important though to play with your culture. And when I was talking about Taiwan elements and kind of joking about that, a lot of times, especially when you have funding from the government, I'm not criticizing any government, but most governments, America doesn't have government funding for the arts in general. On a state level, yes, but federal, forget it. So we don't think about that too much as artists and creators. We just think about the market. But there are plenty of places around the world, Taiwan, France, etc., that do have government funding for the arts. The government doesn't typically care if you make a profit, but they have an agenda, right? They're like, we want you to present this image of our culture or this of this. And it's like, okay, cool. If I have to do that in exchange for that money, that's great. But if you develop the content with that in mind to get started, and then you end up with something that isn't really so interesting to the people over here who you're trying to sell it to, the distributors, etc., then you really have to think. And I have a direct example of this. We're working on a project, and it was actually the one that my wife was pitching, and the feedback we got from sources locally was like, it should have more local elements. Okay, fine. Not unexpected commentary. And then when I was showing it to distributors in Netflix, etc., I'm fortunate to have those contacts, they said, this is great, make it more international. So I was like, all right, so where do you go? In our case, it was very clear. If I skew things in this way to get this little bit of startup money, but I can't sell it, I think I'll self-fund it and then focus on making something that can be distributed worldwide. Other people, especially if they have nothing to start with, may decide to bootstrap it here in Taiwan, and maybe they want to have it focused on Taiwan elements and local production policy, not production policy, but local issues. And that's great, and it's actually commendable, but then you have to reverse engineer your budget. Say, okay, I'm going to do this for Taiwan. It's probably only going to be of interest mostly to people in Taiwan and maybe some film festivals around the world, which won't make money. So what's the potential market here in Taiwan? Oh, it's this. All right, so how much money should I spend on making it? Well, less than that, right? Because you want to make sure that at the end you can do another one, right? The whole goal of creating content, aside from expressing yourself, is to keep doing it. You ideally want to keep making more and more. I'm not trying to get rich. I'm just trying to make sure that I have enough money and enough energy that I can say, all right, let's go on to the next one. So that's a balance everybody has to make personally in terms of whether to cater to like a local focus or an international focus. But I do believe that there's a way to do both. And a good example of this is DreamWorks Kung Fu Panda. Jennifer Nelson, who is the head of story and director on the original, said that their focus was to create something, I never forget this phrase, she said, we want to make something that is culturally specific, but emotionally universal. Culturally specific, but emotionally universal. So they used all the cues that they could with Chinese culture, Kung Fu, etc. But his desire, right, to be the Dragon Warrior competition, but more than that, to really kind of like prove himself to himself and also make his father, the duck, proud, is something everybody can relate to. And also, I have to say it's genius. When I first heard the title of this movie, I thought, that's the dumbest movie ever, Kung Fu Panda. I was like, what the hell? A friend of mine was working on it. He said, oh, we're going to this film called Kung Fu Panda. Like, what? That's the dumbest thing I ever heard. I realized now it's genius. Because when people think of China, they may not know, like people in other parts of the world, they may know very few things, right? But they know pandas and they know Kung Fu. Put them together, and pandas are pretty lazy, sitting around eating bamboo all the time, and they play on that. Now, the funny thing is that when I was in China, I would talk to mostly people who were not in animation, some government officials or whatever, and there was one who said, this Kung Fu Panda is a bad example because he's fat and lazy. And I was like, that's the point. That's the entire point, is that he's fat and lazy, but he aspires to more. And how can this fat, lazy panda who can barely roll over and get up be a Kung Fu master? That's the whole point, right? And I think everybody is starting to understand that now. Even in China, they're getting away from that kind of didactic. Maybe they're going back, but they were starting to get away from that didactic sort of storytelling where the hero is upright and true from the very beginning. That's Superman kind of thing, and there wasn't any kind of flaw. There wasn't any kind of weakness that people can relate to as a point of entry to the character. Superheroes have come a long way. As you watch superhero movies now, they try to make sure they're accessible. They come across as human, either funny or flawed. Spider-Man's a good example, just angst-ridden, guilty about the death of his uncle that he feels responsible for. But that kind of bulletproof Superman, even Superman is not like that Superman anymore. So being playful and then thinking about three important questions. The first question is, what if? So if you write anything down in terms of content creation, these three questions, what if? So what if there's a magical house and all of the family inhabitants each, upon a certain age, manifested a certain quality, being able to talk to animals or becoming super strong, or having power to grow flowers wherever you wanted, to be able to hear things. That's kind of a scary. I don't think I'd want to hear everything. That would just be a little bit disturbing. And what if One family member didn't manifest any powers. What's her story? And what if she ended up being the savior of everyone? So what if? You can really start to generate all sorts of possibilities with that question. To bring it close to this region, what if the zombie apocalypse took place in Imperial Korea? That's an awesome premise. That's an awesome what if. What if that happened? And tying that into historical events where, upon this date, everybody died of a plague. And you can see a producer, what if that plague was a zombie apocalypse? And then you're trying to get something that really captures people's attention. Friends of mine who care less about Korea love Kingdom, right? Because even when they thought, zombies are so played out, man, there's nothing more you can do with a zombie, nothing different. Oh my God, I didn't expect that. It's like, there's always something you can do that's a little bit, always twist things. Whenever somebody tells me that something can't be done or that it's played out, I actually, the way I'm wired, I want to figure out, there's got to be something. Right? Just that challenge of trying to find it. I want. What is your I want? Disney had a stereotype of this for a while where, characters would sing, I want to be where the people are, like Ariel. Or there would be like, they flipped it eventually, like Princess Tiana in, I don't know, it's called Princess and the Frog or the Frog Princess, I forget what they ultimately called it. But she had a I don't want song. I don't want a man to validate me. I don't want this, I don't want that. So, but there's always either the I want or the I don't want. There's usually water involved, singing into Mulan. Who is that girl I see? Judy wants to be a police officer. A rabbit who wants to be a police officer. And they make this point very clear, like, bunny rabbits can't be police officers. The fox is telling her, predators are police officers, not bunny rabbits. But she wants to do it, and she does it. And she becomes one of the most innovative, transformative members of the force. Another I want, Squid Game. Squid Game is awesome because everybody has a want or a need. Whether it's something for their family, or something, actually most of it's for their family for different circumstances, right? An aging mother, or there's a girl who has like the brother, North Korean girl, she's trying to make sure that he's safe and everything's fine. You care about every single one of these characters, almost, but only one is going to be alive at the end. That's intense. So you start to get invested in them, but they're not all going to make it. Just one, maybe not even one. So, what does that do to you as an audience in terms of like breaking the boundaries between something that comes from a different culture and just looking at the humanity? It's very Korean, right? I've had Korean friends. I know a lot about Korean culture, relatively speaking, for a foreigner, and it's incredibly local, but also very gripping, just in terms of the stakes and the human emotions that are being expressed. And then finally, the third one, appeal. So appeal does not mean attractive. Appeal means compelling, gripping. So in this image, I chose it because both Ariel, who was appealing in a cute way, and Ursula the Sea Witch, who was appealing in a very intense way, grab your attention. Darth Vader's appealing. Again, not cute, not attractive, appealing. It's like, oh my God, that's a serious dude. And the way they use cues, even from, I guess it's cultural appropriation, right? They took from samurai, etc., and let's make him look a bit like a samurai. Are all part of just the gestalt of his presence. And then you have other characters, Han Solo, super handsome and appealing in that way. So you want people to be attracted to your characters, or to not be able to look away, like something so horrible, like, oh my God, I can't stop looking, because the intensity of how compelling it is beyond beyond ignoring. Bluey is a great example. That's coming from Australia, but it's, especially now as a dad, I see so much of my own kids and family in this. It's really just about family life. This is another great example of how to express your local culture in a more indirect way, something that's accessible. It's very Australian in terms of the type of house they live in, the things they talk about, etc. Just in a daily life way. But it's these adorable dogs that basically just do the kind of things that moms and dads and kids do every day. But it has an authenticity to it. Like if you have kids or not, you really can recognize just the genuine quality of humor. So this just doesn't happen magically. Walt Disney Company, a lot of time is spent on, here's a bunch of white guys again, on storyboarding, discussion, brainstorming. Here's our team in Beijing. A little more, diverse, kind of, But as it should be, because we're creating Chinese content. And then there's me. I actually tried. Oftentimes, I wasn't there. I realized like the culture in China was like, even among people who I knew, and many of these people were former students, etc. If the boss is there, everybody kind of clams up, like, "Hey, let's brainstorm." I'm like, "Okay, boss, sure, whatever you say." So what do you think we should brainstorm about? And so oftentimes I would just leave. Okay, I'm gonna go, and then they could really get moving. I also would make sure that I establish myself as the biggest idiot in the room. That always helps because then people are like, "Oh, he's a total idiot. Okay, why is he the boss again? Never mind that. I guess we can be idiots too." And then the brainstorming starts. You're off to the races. And even just the type of environment that you set up. People weren't always sitting on the floor, but we had areas, you can see the back there where people had their cubicles that they can work and focus, but also if they want to just like shoot the breeze and talk about things, get toys, etc. Really trying to emulate the organic style that you see at Pixar, at Disney, at most Western animation studios now. Not just for looks, it's not just for the press photos, but really helps people to relax and bring out their best in a playful manner. So I mentioned the Banjing Balian, the Stone Lion Project, and to the point of playing with your culture, we started developing this at Magic Dumpling Entertainment. Disney bought the rights to it, and so we finished developing it. Used it at Disney. I thought for sure somebody has to have done something with stone lions in China. Like how usually if you have a good idea what I'm going to do, that somebody else probably has that same idea or something very similar to it. Even if you think, "Oh, it's a nice day, I should go to the park." It's like, why are so many people at the park? Well, because everybody else had the same thought. Like, "Yeah, it's a nice day, let's go to the park." Or you have an idea about something that you think is original for like a name of something or a book, and then just do a quick Google, "Oh, somebody already thought of it, somebody already did it." I thought for sure, this is me talking too fast again, I realize I've been rambling, but hopefully it's coming through. We're almost in discussion phase. There was one short film I saw from the 1950s. It was a stop motion claymation film about stone lions coming to life in the middle of the night and then going back to their place and but that was it. There's nothing else. And we were developing this idea about stone lions, and it had a basic premise. We chose stone lions because I pitched this to Bob Iger, all talking about pressure, the CEO of Disney, and I said, Jeffrey Katzenberg and DreamWorks took China's pandas. We're going to take China's stone lions because people know pandas and kung fu. They also know stone lions. There are stone lions outside of banks in San Francisco, Los Angeles, even. So you know stone lions, but you don't know that they have a secret, and their secret is that they're alive. The reason you don't know this secret is because stone lions have two rules. Rule number one: don't move. Rule number two: don't talk. Right, so Chip and Nick are like the dumb and dumber of stone lions who are constantly commenting on passersby, breakdancing, doing whatever. And so most stone lions stay in one place their entire life. Chip and Nick, they get dropped down in front of like a convenience store or like a public toilet, like really low-level work. They're rent-a-rock work. Screw up, get fired, next assignment. Right? So the cycle of the show is that they're always in front of a different location. And everybody got it. And the thing about this pitch, I just pitched you now, is that people can repeat it. If you are pitching to people a project, I've had friends who have said, "Oh, I got my pitch down to 5 minutes." I'm like, "Yeah, that's great. That's still too long. But what are you talking about?" It's like, well, you can pitch for 5 minutes. But within that 5 minutes, what's the 10 seconds somebody's going to remember? What's the log line that somebody's going to be able to pitch to their own boss? So any of you guys who are doing anything, any kind of project, remember this. If you tell somebody and they like it, they have to repeat it to their own boss. Everybody's got a boss. Even CEOs have investors and board members, right? Somebody's going to have to repeat it to somebody else without your visuals and just remembering like what it was about. So yeah, there was a robot and like he dreamed of going to Mars. Oh no, Venus. And there was a dog, I think, with him. The dog's name was and like you're dead. But I had people come back to me when they would meet me and say, "Hey, Kevin," I said, "Yeah, I love that stone lion idea. It's like stone lions have this secret, like they're alive. But the reason you don't know is they can't move and they can't talk. But these two idiots do that and they get fired all the time. That's awesome." And I was like, "Oh my God, that's the show." And the fact that that person can relay it, at least enough with their own excitement and just that 10-second elevator pitch, their boss would say, "Yeah, it sounds interesting. Have them send in the deck, right? Let's get the Bible and the presentation in full and see if it's something that we can monetize." So, and they did this. Focus groups are a really important part of this. This is a shot of the focus group, one of the focus groups for Stone Lions. These are Chinese children within our age group of like 6 to 8. And they're showing them, they showed them the short, we had a little test, and they showed them artwork, they asked them about the characters, etc. We were behind the glass so that we couldn't break through, like, no, it's this way, not that way, it's really a gut check, right? You do have to, as a creator, be really cool, because kids are not trying to be cool. Some kids are trying to be cool, but kids are really honest. If they love something, they love it. If they hate something, they hate it. You'll know very fast, right? If you're a parent, you know this. And that's good, because you don't have to worry if I love it. Do they really love it? It's being polite. There's a lot of that, of course, on the adult level. People are, this is great, I think we should talk more, and they don't want to talk to you ever again. But they're just saying that to be friendly. So we got feedback from kids. We also got feedback from young adult females, because my boss said to me, hey, Kev, we want this to be something for the kids. And of course, the moms will be there with the kids, perhaps watching. But young adult females was a hot target for a variety of reasons. To kind of make it very simple, young adult females are very influential. They're influential on their friends, their boyfriends, girlfriends. Younger girls aspire to be like their older aunties and so forth. So it's a really powerful. Women will usually decide if they're with a guy what they're going to see that weekend from Alan. The guy said, I think we just see this. We say, how do I see that? All right. If he's smart. So we wanted to know what they thought about what characters they found appealing. Was it something that could work on the kid level, but also the adult level? Many people try to do this now. It can be very clumsy. You'll see where they're just kind of throwing jokes out there for the adults. But if it's done organically, Pixar had a pretty good track record for a period of time with this, where they would have things in there. Even Bluey, which I mentioned, works on a kid level, and it also works on an adult level, even though we're laughing at maybe different things for different reasons. But don't be afraid of this. I bring it up, and especially those of you who may be watching online, because so many of my friends here in Taiwan, elsewhere in Asia Pacific, in China, I say, when's your test screening? They're like, test screening? They're working on a film, they're working on a TV show. I say, yeah, well, I get a focus group, show it to people, see what they think. They're like, no. And I'm like, no. Like, do you know how many test screenings Disney has per film? Like 6 at least. They'll show it during storyboarding, animatic, during rough animation, and dirty laundry. And they will talk to the audience and say, okay, what you're going to see is this, and it's going to be half animated, blah, blah, blah. They actually have to explain a lot less now, because most people know. You have YouTube or whatever. I get it. Just show it to me. Little kids understand. In fact, sometimes little kids understand better than executives. I've been in these screenings where you're pitching something and an executive's like, I thought this was supposed to be 3D. How come everything's drawn with crayons? Because it's animatic, sir, and it's all okay. So you do deal with that still, even at the highest level. But you don't want to be shocked on opening day. The worst thing possible is to get your first honest reactions when the film opens. That's terrible. Or worse, the second weekend. So there's a saying in Hollywood, the first weekend, if a movie opens well, it means you have good marketing. If the movie still is doing well the second weekend, it means it's a good film, because people have word of mouth, right? The word of mouth happens in that first week. And if people went to see it because it had great marketing, it's like, oh my God, what a piece of crap. Don't see it, don't bother. Then, you know that you have a bad film on your hands. And if you're lucky, Chicken Little is kind of like this, where it opened okay, and then it actually grew a little bit and maintained because it had pretty good word of mouth. It wasn't the best film ever that Disney's done, but it certainly wasn't the worst. And that's kind of what I try to target, just in general, is like, I know I'm probably not going to be the best at anything, but I also don't want to be the worst. Do what I can, and hopefully have something that people appreciate. Watching, hearing, this talk included, and move forward. Don't be afraid to share your work early, even just talking to people about it, and get reactions. You'll be surprised that what you think is working isn't for them, or maybe something you thought wasn't working is. My rule is that you'll get opinions everywhere. If a number of people are telling you the same thing over and over, pay attention to that. Oh, this scene is boring, this scene is boring, everybody thinks this scene is boring, or they hate that character. If one person tells you something, 1 or 2 people, and nobody else says it, you could ignore it unless it hits you right here in the gut. There was one time just one person said it, but it was like, oh. And it was just one guy, but it really hit me and said, okay, we have to do something about that. So, you make your decisions in terms of how you want to filter, but take it in. You're giving a blessing, right? People are giving you their opinion for free. take it. If you don't like it, you can toss it, but it doesn't hurt anybody. Speaking of not hurting anybody, let's embrace technology in a way that is to the good and not to the ill. Everything is changing. So really, and just since Midjourney and DALL-E really broke through people's indifference last year, and then with ChatGPT now, oh my God, I could go on forever about ChatGPT. I'm using it, by the way. I didn't use it. Actually, I did run it through for this presentation, and I tossed out everything that it said, and I'm just doing it. But I have other things I'm doing where I say, hey, that's not too bad. For story work, we're using it. And again, you can make a decision. Sometimes it gives me crap, like, that's not me. Other times, like, hey, that's not me, but that's a really great idea. And then incorporating that into something that you're working on. The point is, it's not going away. And we really have to think about how what we're doing is going to evolve like really fast based on the speed of this adoption. A lot of people think about the onset of AI as the precursor to the Terminator, and that we're really just training our future killers and captors and so forth. And who knows, maybe we are. But I like to think that it's something that can be used just like any tool for better, as well as, there are some people who use things for worse. And really, the more that we get involved, the more that people of goodwill, the more that people of a creative nature get involved and embrace this, the more I think we'll be on a more thoughtful mode of an application and less of like, Arnold Schwarzenegger affection. And as I said before, I think it's going to be necessary for the content that we will create, the environments we create, the courses we teach, the outreach we want to have to the world. It'll be necessary to use AI tools to maximize what one person can do or what a group of people can do. It's amazing now what one person can do. You can do anything. That's the scary part. So there's no excuses. You can do anything you want, and it doesn't really cost that much. Right? Most of the tools are free. Or very, I pay now $20 a month US for ChatGPT. I was using it for a while free, and then I just wanted to not have it cut off how much input I was putting in, etc. $20 is nothing for something that does so much. Midjourney, the same thing. And of course, my blog, I talk about this. There's a lot of controversy, obviously, including among my friends some of whom are horrified. Kevin, you're doing what? I feel so betrayed. And it's like, yeah, I don't feel it makes me any less of an artist or a writer or a creator. It actually empowers me. And I still do things with my hand, with my head, with my heart. But now I just have this amazing tool it's almost like having an extra voice there. Hey, what do you think? And it's not thinking. It's just, machine learning, churning. But oftentimes we'll turn something up and say, that sparks an idea. And definitely facilitates the kind of quantity of production that's going to be necessary. So technology is a tool guided by your heart. A blade can be used to kill somebody, or it can be used to save a life. It doesn't mean the blade is good or bad. It's a blade. It cuts things. But the direction that it cuts, right, this is a double-edged sword, is guided by your intention. So the problem is that the technology of AI development is happening much faster than the technology of blade development. So there is the issue of how do we keep up with the pace of that and discuss it and make good decisions. And you've probably heard of the moratoriums that have been calling, hey, we should just all take a break and time out. Let's just think about this a little bit. The problem with that is that nobody's going to do that. And even if some people did, other people, maybe of less goodwill, will keep going. So it's unfortunately, sort of like the splitting of the atom. Once the atom's split, it's split. You can't put it back. It's like, okay, we have nuclear energy power now. It can be used to power environments and create, to light cities. It can also be used to destroy those same cities. And but we have to deal with it. Many people will say, well, if governments are going to try to legislate this and put safeguards on it, they haven't done too well with other stuff so far, like climate change and so forth. So what hope do we have here? It's really going to happen at the grassroots level, I feel, where people like yourselves, people who are out there watching, are engaging with this and saying, what do I want this to do? Don't be afraid of it and run away from it. Don't judge it by the crappy way it's being used now. I remember when computer graphics first came out into the public eye, most of the imagery was being created by programmers. And no insult to programmers, but many of them didn't have any art experience. Like, hey, look, I just made something visual. It's a big deal, right? People are like, oh, that's so ugly. Once artists and designers started using those tools, a couple things happened. The imagery got better, the tools got better, because then the artist said, hey, can you give me something that does this, or can I have a stylus, or can I have a way to do this easier? And the programmers responded to that. Everything gets better. I think AI, virtual production, these technologies, it's going to be the same thing, but only if we engage. So to engage, we have to educate ourselves for the future, not the past. Spoiler alert, all of you are currently being educated for the past. I don't mean because you're here at this particular school, but everybody in the world is by default being educated for the past because you're being educated by people who came from the past, myself, etc. And this is something I always have to remind myself and think about, not only when I teach, but also my children who are growing up. Like, where are they in school? And a certain amount of this is unavoidable, right? I mean, you're not going to just change the whole education system. And even if you did, maybe you change it to something worse. So you don't just want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, but just be conscious of the fact that the things you learn, but also the way you learn the things you learn is changing. And so just constantly evaluate, is this the best way I could be doing this? I remember I was talking to my daughter, and she was really having trouble with math. She's really kind of stressed out about math. And I said, Claire, I said, you really don't have to work. This is going to horrify me. My wife was like, you told her that? So I'm going to repeat this story. I said, you really don't have to worry about this too much. I know it's a big deal in school, but I said, here, let me show you. I said, Siri, what's 17 plus 12? And then Siri's like, 17 plus 12 is 29. And because we have the Apple HomePod there, and Claire was just, and then I said, Siri, what's 13 times 70 times whatever? And then Siri gave an answer, which I assume is correct. Although be careful, especially with AI, you can't assume. But in Siri's case, and then Claire was just like a light bulb. I said, you don't really have to know how to add, subtract, multiply. I said, and my wife was like, well, if there's 8 apples on the table, she needs to be able to say there's 8, not 7. I said, yeah, sure. You don't want to raise an idiot. But I said, it's more important to understand how to utilize these tools, how to make relationships and connections by thinking laterally about things, than the data itself, the facts itself, memorizing details and historical facts, etc. It's important to know these things, but what you do with that is more important than the things themselves. And so utilizing the tools for that purpose is something that is going to change a lot of things, including education. And I know this, of course, is a topic of discussion with project-based learning and so on. But thinking laterally is, I guess the best way I can talk about this is a diagram here. This is you, right? And then here's something that you want to achieve, your goal. We tend to think, oh, I have this thing I want to achieve is there, but there's a field of possibilities around you. All sorts of different ways you can get to that thing, all sorts of different things that could be maybe better than that, or as an alternative. And this is important to think about, and also to think about how maybe the way to go forward is actually to go back a bit, right? Up and over to achieve that goal. And a real world example of this is when I went from painting major in undergraduate to computer graphics master's degree. I didn't just jump in. I went to a community college for a year to learn just some computer basics. And for me, that was like, people, you're going to community college, loser. And I was like, hey, I knew what I wanted to get out of that. Community colleges had a bad rap. That's where people go who can't go to college. And that's actually not true, by the way. Those of you who are representing community colleges online, community colleges are great, because I went to one. I took a Photoshop class, so I can learn some very basics about the computer, and then apply it to graduate school using my art portfolio, but with some computer knowledge, so I was qualified to walk in the door of a computer animation facility. So I did this, to get up there. And maybe that's not where you want to be. Maybe there's some other possibility outside your field of imagination that only becomes apparent to you once you've been over here and had seen some different options. So don't always think this way. Don't always think too directly, but think laterally. And a great example of this is getting his name here. I wrote it down because I knew I was going to forget. Kyle McDonald. So Kyle McDonald had this experiment. We wanted to turn a paperclip into a house. And so he did this with a series of online trades. And he traded the paperclip for a fish pen that somebody had, and then later he traded the fish pen for, let's see, I think I have to do this here. Paperclip for a fish pen for a hand-sculpted doorknob, then the doorknob for a camping stove, and then the camping stove for a portable electric generator, He kept doing this until eventually he had a house. The full list, I won't, because we're already over time, is online. And this became quite a famous example. And actually part of the reason he was able to do the trades is because while he was doing it, it took him a year. He had it on his blog, and so he was publicizing this, right? So letting people know what you're doing and putting yourself out there is important. He wasn't just doing this quietly. It became a thing. The key to his success is that in each case, he was thinking about what the other person needed for that exchange. The person who gave him the pen for the paperclip clearly needed a paperclip more than a pen, right? Or the stove for the generator. So thinking about in a negotiation, in a friendship, in a partnership, what does the other person need and what can you offer that helps them out and what can they offer that helps you out for that stereotypical win-win, right? But at least to work together. This is the way to move forward, to collaborate. You can get a house out of paperclip. Although I've talked a lot about AI, AI is not going to do everything for you. So there's a few principles here in terms of thinking laterally. One is to cultivate your talent stack. I consider myself a decathlete. I'm not the world record holder in any event, but I'm pretty good at most of them, or at least a dozen of them that apply to my field of endeavor as a producer. And that's fine. Most of you are not the best in the world at what you're interested in, and you're also not the worst. But you can really metamorphosize into a better version, transform to a better version of yourself by combining, let's say, your interest in biology with computer graphics. Many people did that in the early days of CGI to create new software for growing plants or for creating fractals and so forth. Having a stack of talent, having a stack of abilities that is unique to you in terms of your interests and also how you're trying to express yourself is, I think, very important. And even though we talk about AI taking over everything, AI needs to be driven by a human being, by a human heart, by a human mind. There still is a role for the director, the editor, the person who wants to make something, but you're just operating at a higher level. And operating at that level requires you to have certain knowledge about things about the world. So having a stack of talent, a stack of interests, very important. Creativity is currency. You may not have any money, there's no money in this pocket, but there's potentially money up here. I can take a blank piece of paper and write something down. You can take a blank screen and make something that people will pay to watch, pay to purchase. You can basically print your own money. Your creativity is your bank account for life. And I'm not just talking about creating content, but coming up with anything, an idea for a new business, a different way of doing something in your daily life. Never think of yourself as poor. Time is actually more valuable resource than money. Time is the only irreplaceable resource, right? The fact that you guys have spent this time with me today so far is great because you're not getting it back, right? If you lose $1, you can get another $1. If you blow $1 million, you can make $1 million, but you're not getting more time. And this is something I become more conscious of as I get older. So how are you going to spend that time? How are you going to apply it? But the fact that you have time, especially those of you who are younger, means that you're rich in ways that people who don't have that time aren't. So never think of yourself as poor. Always think of that resource you have. If you don't have a job at a certain point, say, great, I got time now, put it to use. Like I said, care about yourself the most. Don't just sit around and whatever, get moving, right, for your own sake, because why not? And then finally, related to that, take risks. Taking risks doesn't mean just doing something crazy. You look at this, I think it's Japanese ski jumper. Look at how focused she is, the intensity. She's trained. She knows where she is in the air. She knows where she wants to land. Right? Hopefully, she does that successfully. So she's not just being reckless, but she's taking a big risk. This is not, it's a dangerous sport. But for somebody who has the training and practice and the focus, the rewards can be huge. And this is something that, just to kind of wrap this up before we go to discussion, is been a reminder to myself every day, because it's actually, as I get older, it's harder to take risks. Like when I was younger, even 40, and I didn't have a wife, didn't have kids, just do whatever. I was going to do it. If I lose money or whatever, I spent too much time on this, it was all me, right? It was just on me. But then being married, and my wife was in the same business, so we were still kind of yeah, let's just do it. Once you have kids, then it's okay, do I spend $100,000 on this thing for the studio, or do I send my kids to college? And you're starting to make these kind of decisions, and you become more risk averse. And my wife said something very cool to me once, because I was really concerned about something related to money. And she said, Kevin, she said, don't become a less cool version of yourself just because you have kids now. You don't want to raise them to be worried about things. You want to raise them to be as fearless as you used to be before you had them. And I was like, whoa, that's a lot to process, but I got it. I understood, what she was saying, and I remind myself of that every time I feel like, oh shit, like maybe we shouldn't be doing this right now. So again, not being reckless, but still, taking those chances and going for things. So one thing we're doing now is developing a project for real-time animated tutors. So the basic concept here is that after-school education is important to Asian parents, but a little bit tiresome to Asian children. And the problem is that traditional education approaches prepare children for the past, not the future. Where have you heard that? So our solution is story-driven education that promotes engagement. None of this is particularly unique, by the way. It's not like, oh my God, I never heard of that before. People are doing this. And we want to focus on project-based education because it fosters lateral thinking and lifelong learning. You want to teach yourself how to learn. It's not going to stop. That's a good thing. So what we want to do is have story-driven, project-based STEAM learning with real-time animated tutors. Now Claire, my daughter, is in a class where she's online and they have story-driven edutainment, as they call it. There's a teacher there, a human teacher, talking interactively with the students. So we thought, okay, what if we did this in a way, for example, in an immersive English environment, but you're actually dealing with an animated character. So what if the characters that you were watching in the short films, etc., for the educational content, for the curriculum, also were there to talk with you interactively online? So one character we came up with, Papa Penguin, and his daughter Dot. We have a little backstory for them where they're growing up in Antarctica. Due to climate change, their chunk of ice that they live on breaks off. Papa Penguin's like, no problems. His daughter Dot's freaking out. He's like, Argentina's right there. We'll just kind of like paddle our way to the tip of Argentina. Oh crap. They actually get carried by currents across the Pacific. Sorry, not terribly scientific, but cartoon. And they end up in Hualien. So you've got these penguins in Hualien. So you see the incongruity right there. And our basic premise then is that to survive in Hualien, so they get shelter, find food, and just learn about the environment, we take the students through different STEAM projects, episode by episode, to understand like economics through planting, for instance, like using crop planting to demonstrate financial principles. And also to highlight things about Taiwan. There are Taiwan elements there, but I don't think we ever mentioned Taiwan directly at all. But anybody from Taiwan will go, hey, that's Taiwan, that's Hualien. Other people don't necessarily care about that, but they're like, oh man, that penguin's in like a tropical or subtropical island, right? That's crazy. So luckily they discovered mango ice. That kind of like makes things a little better. It's like, oh my God, this is way better than the ice we had in Antarctica. But it's a way to stimulate children's creativity and confidence with this playful parenting dad. So he basically makes himself a fool, Papa Penguin does, to get his daughter to loosen up. Dot's kind of very buttoned up and like kind of a little bit like Claire, my daughter. My Claire's like, Daddy, you have to be up by 6:30 and the bus is going to be there. And I know, Claire. And I say, all right, you ready yet? And like she's kind of like moving me out of the house in the morning. Some of you may know what I'm talking about, right? In terms of like the intensity of the kids. Like, are we going to be okay? Do you have my wet wipes? Yeah, I got the wet wipes. And I think sometimes we put this on our children because they know that we expect a lot of them. They know the world is a serious place, and so they can get very intense. So having a character like the father in Bluey, who just is playful in a way that is educating, teaching the kids about them, realizing that they're being taught, not being lectured, is the goal. And in terms of channels, obviously interactive online projects hosted by real-time characters is nothing new. So we're not taking, there's nothing new under the sun. What we're doing is taking things from here and there and combining it into an approach interactively that we feel is important to us. This is not just a project, this is our kids' life. Like we actually said, if we raise our kids with this, this is how we would want it to shape them. So we're using that as our guidepost. And it's inspired by the power of puppetry, which has a universal appeal around the world. But of course, you know, here in Taiwan, Budaishi puppetry is very, very popular. Jim Henson, this is very old technology. Even this is very old technology. I have to update this deck. This was current like maybe a year ago, and now even that to basically interface in a way that is super cheap now. The cost of the hardware to get this kind of stuff was prohibitive. Now there's no reason not to do it. You just have to do it. And then, of course, you have to break through that haze of indifference to find distribution, etc. So I'm in the process of talking to investors, distributors. The main thing they want to see is a demo. So people, that's a great idea, go do it, and then let's see it. And there's no reason for us not to do a demo. Demo or die, right? It's not too expensive. It doesn't even take so much time. Just get it done and show somebody. Don't tell me about it. Show me. So, all right. I flew into this. I ate quite a bit into the discussion part. I apologize. But thankfully, we had an hour for discussion. Now we've got like a half hour. And I want to remind people who are online, if anybody's still there, that do we have people who have been sending in comments or questions?
I know.
Oh, are you not the person who's doing that? Okay. Anyway, if you have comments or questions, and there's a place to send that to the chat, we have somebody somewhere here who is filtering those. We'll also open it up here in the room. And we had people who also sent in some questions here. So between all of those, I think we've got plenty for the next half hour. Do we want to open up with who has an initial question to start with? Or comment?
Let's have some Q&A now. And thank you so much
My
for
pleasure.
your empowering, encouraging speech. I believe you
I
all.
hope it was semi-coherent.
You've learned a lot, and I love all those, slides, examples, and yeah, I think you all learned a lot, and it's such a
They'll be the judge of that.
great to see that. Yeah, I love this
Well,
talk.
thank you so much. I appreciate it. I appreciate
Thank you so
it.
much, Kevin.
If anybody does, I know you guys are between classes. If anybody has to get out now, I won't be offended.
Don't worry,
Please go.
yeah.
But if you want to stay and discuss this further,
you can ask Kevin
yes.
questions, and yeah, I think we have some questions here. Maybe I will start the first one. Okay. So, all right.
Oh, I think I have the same list as you, right?
Yeah, we
Well, here, let me go through and
actually, yeah, there's some great questions.
what do you think about the
from our
future of animation story writer in Taiwan or Southeast Asia? Would you recommend them pursuing their career in the U.S. or EU country? Would you rather have unlimited bacon but no game, or have game but no bacon? I like bacon. I think that probably got mistranslated. But in terms of pursuing your career, I think, let's start with that one. Pursuing your career from Taiwan is one of the best places possible. And again, I realize, especially in this room, we have people who aren't from Taiwan, and when you're done with your studies here, you may be going back to your own country. That's fine. Let me broaden this out. You always have to check yourself. You don't need to be anywhere to do what you want to do. And including if you want to interface with the rest of the world. You can be wherever you want to be. That can be your home country, that can be some other country. It really doesn't matter. The important thing is that you understand what you want to do, and that you are trying to balance how to express, the fun of your culture, the interesting of your culture, with the things that people care about in the rest of the world, in terms of just emotion, common human interests, common human understanding of things. So, the pandemic, this is something I thought about a lot during the pandemic, because for a while nobody could go anywhere. But you can't just sit there and do nothing. I mean, some people did. I did for a little while too. I just sit there and go, what's now? But at some point, you go, all right, slap, let's get back to business here. And there was a lot that people learned they could do online without having to go and meet people in person. I'm going back to Los Angeles for my first business trip in 4 years, in a few days actually, to meet some people in person and to renew my driver's license. So stupid thing. But that face-to-face time is important, right? Like even being here with you guys in this room, is different from those of you who are watching me here online. And there's a connection you can make, there's a feel you get for the situation that you often can't get when you're like here. But there's a lot that you can do remotely. And so I don't ever feel limited by where you are, think, I have to go here to do this, or I have to be there to do that. You can be wherever you want to be. And in fact, that environment where you are, whether it's your home country or wherever, could be the thing that's fueling you, right? Inspiring you to present something that is unique enough to break through that haze of difference. I'll try to keep these answers short.
Yes, thank you, Kevin. But I do think being in Taiwan actually is a plus also for international students and local students, because we have great environment with the freedom of
It's
speech.
a pretty open environment,
Freedom of
and
speech,
very
very
livable.
open-minded,
Yeah.
like what you just mentioned, a good example of
Yeah.
LGBTQ.
Yeah.
I mean, among all the
Yeah.
countries in Asia Pacific, they're
Oh, but you reminded me of
Yeah.
something. This is because before my wife and I were actually talking about moving back to Taiwan before the pandemic, because we were in China and things were just getting like air quality, etc. It was like we were spending 25% of our time in Taiwan visiting, and then the other 75% in China. So I said, hey, what if we flip that and like live in Taiwan, but then if we have to do a business trip in China or US, wherever, that sounded good, but like so much trouble to move, wah. So we just stayed where we were, and then, like I mentioned before, boom, pandemic kicked us in the butt, and then we were out. So it's like, and it was tough. But when we were here, it was like, okay, Taiwan's very livable, but again, it's a small market. It's small. It's not a criticism, but it's not the biggest market in the world for content creators, especially. So you could focus on that. But I think there's actually the biggest opportunity is this: Taiwan operates at the highest level of quality in terms of creative technology, in terms of engineering, but at a reasonable price point. You can get paid, you can make a pretty good living here by Taiwan standards, but also still come in under rates, even cheap rates that people are offering in the US, Canada, Europe, elsewhere. So there's a competitive advantage there. And I think that in Taiwan, what we're trying to do with our own company, of course I'm a foreigner, so I wouldn't actually do this, is to utilize the resources in Taiwan, but have our business be foreign facing, our business be international minded in terms of where we would sell it, distribute it, etc. And as we're trying to make that work, and it's a work in progress right now, I don't have the result yet, but we're working on it. The goal is that we can do things for people that is more affordable for them, the foreign entities, producers, studios, etc., than they could imagine, but also provides a good living for people who are working on it here, right? And I'm still having fun. So that's the that's the trifecta that I'm trying to go for. But I think it's possible for any of you guys. Just keep the world in mind, but you don't have to leave Taiwan if you want. You are wherever you choose to be mentally and virtually. Any questions directly here in the room? Well, I'll leave the piece of paper for now in case you run out. Anybody?
Yeah, any questions?
I thought I saw somebody with a online. Do we have? Let's go ahead and see.
Yeah. The online listener would like to ask a question about combining features of local culture and history. And take Kung Fu Panda for example. Does this mean that we have to choose the most well-known and iconic trait of our culture to make our story?
The audience is not okay. So if let's see, take Kung Fu Panda for example. Just we have to choose the most iconic trait to make our story. If the audience is not familiar with background, how can we make them dive into the story? Great question. And something I want to point to is actually not historical exactly, but definitely talks about the balance of cultural focus, but also international mindset, which is the movie Spirited Away by Miyazaki. So Spirited Away, again, it's not the biggest global box office hit ever, but it did pretty well in the US for Americans suck. I mean, everybody's like, oh God, it has subtitles. We don't want to watch it. Or if they dub it, the dubbing is oftentimes is horrible. So the sad fact is that for most of the United States, I'm not trying to criticize the US, but it's really true that if you're successful with international film, it's usually going to be on the coasts, right? New York, and then like from Seattle down through San Diego. But then there's like the flyover territory, as we call it, where maybe you get some traction. Actually, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon was one of the films that eventually broke through to like people in Idaho watching. Let's watch that tiger crouching on the dragon thing, because they just heard enough about it. People talking, like, okay, what the hell? We gotta go see this thing. Hey, it wasn't so bad. But that's rare when that happens. Back to Miyazaki and Spirited Away, there is a depth of iconography, imagery, symbolism in that movie that is inherent to Japanese culture, to being a Japanese, that most foreigners, unless they study that, won't understand. And that which bring Japanese audience members to tears, right? Old men who are walking out of that movie crying because it reminds them of things that they grew up with in their childhood that are gone now. And there are people like me who are like, this is a really cool movie, right? I may not get everything, subtext, etc. And then when I learned later, I said, oh, that's cool. But I was into the story of the girl Sen and like this idea that Miyazaki had that children are kind of being raised with this listless, spoiled existence, and what happens when you're thrust into a situation where things you relied on are gone, your parents, and you're in a real serious situation. It's like, serve this witch, and if you don't serve her well, she's going to turn you into a chicken and eat you. That's pretty, that was right. But she has to learn how to grow up and find herself and become an adult, become her true self in the process. So that's something that everybody can understand. And the fact that the iconography of Japan might not have been, at the top of mind for everybody who was watching it, but they could appreciate just the lush visuals and the really unexpected contrast in that movie is, I think, a good example of how you can balance your culture with international. I remember one of the things that really was profound for me in that film was when there was one sludge monster who comes into Yubaba's bathhouse, and like everybody's terrified of it, it stinks, and Yubaba the witch tells Sen, like, you go and take care of that. Okay, what choices you have? And it turns out that the sludge monster was actually River God that was polluted, because I see when she pulls out a bicycle, and then she realizes that basically this is a trashed river. And in terms of like making a comment about climate change and taking care of the earth without preaching, that was just genius. Almost like it brought me to tears, like seeing that. And then it rewards her with the little bits of gold from the riverbed. Just amazing. That kind of insight, that kind of playfulness is really something that'll do you well as a creator, no matter what you're doing. Was there another one that we have from?
I have a good question here.
Sure.
It's a student there, because many of our students will be future elementary school teachers, future educators, and they wonder if they're interested in knowing that if you have any advice for elementary school teachers to be.
Get ready.
How to encourage the kids for creativity, in the classroom.
I'm so glad I teach university. Because just having kids now, so Claire's 8, Emma's 5, but Emma's still in kindergarten. She's going into her 3rd year of kindergarten. That sounds weird to say. In America, there's 1 year of kindergarten, but she's going to go into her 3rd year. I think it's 3rd year. That's cool. It's she's basically been in preschool.
Yes.
But Claire, I see just what she's had to deal with in school with different teachers who have different approaches. Some teachers are more old school and like just disciplinarians, like keeping the class in line. And here's the stuff you need to know, learn it. And I totally kind of get it. Those tend to be the older teachers as well, often, who just are trying to keep a lid on things because, especially in grade school, oh my God, the lid could come off like really quickly, and then it's hard to get that back into the box. And I remember even in high school in America, where the teachers who were a little more strict right up front, then they loosened up and you respected them because you're kind of like afraid of them a little bit. It's always good to be feared just a little bit. And friendly, but I'm smiling, but my teeth can be used for other things. But the teachers who tried to be like cool right from the beginning had trouble because nobody respected them. Everybody kind of saw through it as a ploy, and they could never get the class back. So what's the point to the question? I think it's important to be playful with your class, but still in control. Now that's not an easy balance at all, right? But I've seen teachers who do it where they seem like they're not in control, but they're definitely in control. And there are certain points where somebody will try to test, because kids will test. They want to see where the boundaries are, and that's part of learning. Like kids try to learn, what can I get away with and what can I do? And my kids are sneaky about stuff, and I actually don't mind, because as long as they're not doing something dangerous or like flagrantly disrespectful. But they're trying to see what happens when I do this or that, and sometimes they learn what happens. But I'm not talking anything strict, but like I let them know what the boundaries are, what's important, what isn't important. And teachers, good teachers, I think, can do that as well, where some things you can let slide, other things you have to, of course, like address. But beyond that sort of like control aspect, I really feel that teaching kids by doing is more important than by telling them something, as I'm up here yammering away, by telling them something or by having them learning a book. And a good example of that is English. Like my wife, she has pretty good English, but she said she was really terrified to start using it when she got out of college because most of it was book learning and then actually like talking to somebody, like going to America and like walking into a Gap and trying to buy a sweater and like and then I know with my Chinese as well, it's like I don't want nail jiggle, but it's just no improvement whatsoever. It's terrifying, but the more you just do it, like when I would travel on my own in China and like nobody was with me, the few times I had to do that, I would come back and I would say, oh, your Chinese got a lot better. I was like, yeah, because it was like, it's like sink or swim, you know, you have to like survival level stuff. So the doing is important. And so classes where they have more of an experiential approach, where like even my daughter, where she's studying something but then making something or getting her hands involved, it actually triggers different parts of your brain. They've done BCI, brain-computer interface scans, where while people are doing something, they see what parts of their brain light up. And almost inevitably, when you're doing something related to the subject, you get a better response cognitively than when you're just being told something. So here again, I think I've even done things where I used ChatGPT. I said, write me a 10-week syllabus on da 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 da. You know, even before I can like just there it is. There's a 10-week syllabus on, and this isn't. I don't consider this anything horrifying. It's like, oh, that's interesting. And then I look at that. That's like the starting point for something. And I haven't actually used this for an actual class yet, but I just experiment, like, or tell me how to make authentic Hangzhou fried rice. And I'm like, and it's like I show my wife, is that you? Oh, that's correct. So this can save you the time you spend on the boring work, and then you can build on top of that to really go somewhere. So imagine if, as a teacher, instead of like being buried under lesson plans, etc., you can have a certain amount of that work delegated to your AI friend. Evaluate it like you were an administrator. Imagine that you're the administrator and this is the teaching assistant handing you their first draft, and you look at that and make adjustments. But you're also thinking at a higher level. So in terms of the tools you use, in terms of the approach you take, really, it's time to rethink everything. Don't just do it the way it's been done. If I teach at a university again, and I probably will, I will teach differently than I taught just last semester based on things that have been going on. The company we're starting now for content development and production, I'm glad actually that we got delayed by the pandemic because it gave us time to rethink and to see and absorb the changes that are happening. So we didn't start out doing it the same old way we always did and then go, oh, that was a mistake, because everything just flipped again, in the midst of what we're trying to do. So,
this really aligns with our teaching philosophy here in NTUE, because we do believe all the teachers and educators need to learn and be updated with all the new technology, and we all need to learn.
Well, you learn from your students too. I learned so much from my students at school, not just at the university level, but like grade school level. They help teach you.
That's true.
Yeah. I mean, you know that as a teacher yourself and as a mom.
Yeah, that is. I think your points really help a lot, and it's close with our teaching philosophy here.
That's cool. Was there another question we have here or online?
Any question outside now?
We got more here, so. Let's see. Yeah, let me try to do this real quick. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Debbie. Sure.
First of all, thank you for your very presentation. It was very encouraging. I loved it. I have a question. Is there anything from maybe removed from the United States, China to Taiwan, or your previous job in Disney to what you do here that that you miss from kind of the way it was before, that you sort of wish it was in existence, whether it be in tellretell, your current company, your dreams you see, the processes that you do, or whether it be in teaching and kind of the students that you interact with here versus the students that you interact with in California?
Well, coming from Southern California, I really miss good, authentic Mexican food. And so, I know you guys try, here in Taiwan and in China, but it's like, there's some there, it's not that, but it's like, I'm really looking forward to going back this weekend. I'm going to be twice the size. But on a serious note, I don't think I try to recreate what I miss. And maybe you guys do this too. Like if there's something I miss, it's like, all right, I'm going to make it happen so that I don't miss it anymore. And what I mean by that, for instance, in the classes is that, and maybe you can tell by my unconstructed presentation here, which I didn't practice for at all. I prepared a day, but I don't have a prepared text. I just talk. Figure out. But I try to create a comfortable level of discourse and interaction in the class with my students so that they loosen up. In America, I never had any trouble with this. Like in Cal Arts, you don't have to ask students to challenge you. They'll challenge you right away. Say, hey, if anybody thinks I'm talking nonsense or whatever, just raise it. You don't have to say that. People are like, what are you talking about? I mean, you old man, you don't know anything. And it's cool. I actually like that when people come at you, because if they come at you and you can't answer, right, or respond, then maybe they've got a really good point. You should think about that. Or if they come at you and say, well, have you thought about this? And, oh, okay. That kind of energy is something that, not at every school, but at most schools that I've taught at in the U.S., specifically Cal Arts, they encourage that inquiry, that questioning, that challenging. Here, in Beijing also, I had to just encourage students, hey, look, if at any point there's anything you think is wrong, because especially if I'm talking about something related to a different culture, whatever, I'm probably gonna be wrong about something, right? I guarantee you I'm gonna be mischaracterizing something or just clearly making a mistake. So let me know. I'm not gonna penalize anybody for this. And people have to trust that you won't. And you also have to make sure you don't, because if at any point, and this also applied to when I was working at Disney in the company, we would challenge each other on ideas, etc., trying to make the best thing possible. So then at Disney China, when we formed that team, the culture was different. Like I said, if I'm there in the room, people are like, oh shit, the boss is here. Everybody be cool. They know me, but as I'm still, there's that authority. And if you want people to loosen up and just express themselves, you cannot ever make them regret that. If they ever regret it for any reason, maybe you didn't even intentionally do something to penalize them, but you said something to embarrass them or whatever, that's a dumb idea. They will never open their mouth again, right? You will lose the best of them. So that is something that basically I've missed in certain situations. To your question, I understand it's a different culture, so people aren't going to express themselves a certain way. And so I've tried to not only cultivate, at first I tried to cultivate that, but then I realized it's not only making people more like me, but also me coming to them. And there are some people who aren't going to, I'm like this, like, wow, everything's out there, right? There are some people who aren't going to be like that. Many people hopefully aren't going to be like that. And that's cool. And I have to make sure that if I'm talking about something, my wife has been helpful with this, where, because we work together on projects, you say, Kevin, sometimes you're so excited about something that I can't get in there. Like I got something, especially with the language barrier, right? Like she knows how, but she has to think a little bit. And like if I'm too fast, that is a problem for the discourse. And again, it limits the potential. So that's something I had to learn as well. This may not be the best example of it. Just in the interest of time, my wife said, don't talk too fast. I said, oh, I know I'm going to talk too fast. I always do. But to widen this out, if there's ever something you want to see, like they say, be the change you want to see in the world. I know it sounds corny, but really, if there's something you think is missing, do it. There was a class called Safari Time that my daughter had, a music class in Beijing. It was in the embassy district, so there were like kids there from other countries, and not all of the parents were from the embassy. But the cool thing about it was that they had multiple languages. My mom was always impressed. Like, oh my God, it's so cool. Your kids can speak, they're bilingual, English, Chinese. I said, Mom, they're behind the curve. Like, their friends have like 4 or 5 languages. I mean, if you come from Europe, right, and you're in Beijing, you've got English, you've got whatever, French, Chinese, maybe, Vietnamese perhaps also. So the music class actually had kids singing songs in different languages and, working with instruments. And the whole reason it started, Hannah Ryder, a friend of mine who started this, she worked for the UN for a while and then has her own consulting company, is because she was looking for a class like this and it didn't exist for her son and Moses. And then, so she said, well, I'll just do it myself. And it started out very small. Pretty soon got so big that it was overflowing the library cafe that she was doing it in. And then the pandemic hit and we all got scattered to the 4 corners of the earth. But it was really cool to see her make what she wanted to see and do it. So I encourage all of you guys, if something's missing, manifest it.
Creative.
Yes, we've got 2 minutes left.
Who's ready to challenge Kevin?
Yes.
Challenge Kevin.
Okay, cool. She got her fist up too.
Yeah, I have actually kind of curious. My name is Jenna,
Hi,
and
Jenna.
I'm from Mongolia. So I'm a new immigrant to Taiwan.
Oh, I had a Mongolian student
Yeah.
just last semester at TNUA.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I think I know her. She's going to have her performance soon.
Yes.
Yeah, we
We all know
are
each
kind
other.
of sisters. Yeah, she's a very talented girl studying.
Yes, one of my best students. So anyway, you're,
Yeah. So my question is actually I have a family and children here.
Mhm.
So I'm very concerned about their mother language and heritage, how to learn it. So I wrote the story about my experience and my children. And is it possible for me to show you my dumb idea?
Sure. I have cards here so that people, I have my, oh, wait a minute. we've been talking about challenges, opportunities, in the future. This is my QR code for my personal contact. I also have my business card here, so I thank you for reminding me to throw that up. I encourage all of you online here in the room to keep in touch, and I would definitely be happy to look at that. We, as a development company, we are developing a slate of IPs. We're also talking to people who have projects that they'd be interested in collaborating in, and Mongolian culture, definitely. We had a project we were developing before that didn't unfortunately go into production, but was actually had some basis in Mongolia where my wife had visited before, and was, of course, their Wolf Totem. The novel Wolf Totem is something that I read an English translation of, and was really a powerful experience for me in terms of just the story and the time that was representing and the struggles that people had. So I never went to Mongolia, but Mongolia kind of came to me. In Beijing, there was a place where they had the yurts and the Mongolian barbecue, and I ended up drinking a lot of baijiu when I was in China, but the Mongolian baijiu, oh my God, it's on a whole other level. And they give you a bowl of it too.
I had one in Taiwan actually.
And what I loved especially was the musical expression. So there was one leader there who had invited us, and the music started after the meal, and then he was singing. He's really good. And then at one point,
Throat singing?
Yes. And then at one point he walked away from the microphone just to show that he wasn't lip syncing. It was really him. Because said, "Why is he leaving?" I said, "Oh, he's just showing off. Like he's trying to show you that it's really him and not something that's coming through the PA system." So it was. I remember. I don't even remember that night. I remember part of that night, but we all had to sing something. So I sang "Country Road" by John Denver, which I learned for some reason in China. People love that song. They only remember that, "Country Road, take home to." That might be the only verse they remember, but it really kind of speaks to them in terms of travel and distance, and so that was my go-to for it. It's "Country Road."
I hope that country road bring you to Mongolia one day.
Yes, well, hopefully. Yeah, I wouldn't mind to go back. But yes, please do get in touch with me.
Thank you.
I think anything else from online that we came in? We got it, okay. Awesome. And let's see. I think I've addressed everything else here in the course of, expectations. Here, I expect a creative and professional lecture. Well, I don't know how I did, but hopefully.
I think you actually include all these questions in your talk.
If I didn't, if there's something that you felt I didn't address, or you just want to stay in contact, please do. Again, I don't always get back right away, but I do get back. So I'm certainly not social media type, boom, 5 seconds later than I am. I'm more like a day or two later because I got kids and stuff at home. But I do always follow up eventually. And if I don't, if for some reason you contact me, that means that it didn't get to me. So do it again. If you contact me and a week goes by and you don't hear anything, that means it got grabbed by my spam filter or whatever. So just send more, "Hey, Kevin," or try to hit me a different way. The website here has my email, my socials, etc. So you can triangulate to get me that way. And of course, Tiffany, if you ever have trouble with anything, you can always get a hold of me.
Yes, please reach out to
And thank you
us.
again for inviting me. It's really a lot of fun. And I think so.
It's our
Let's give it a hand for Murphy and everybody else for helping